Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's Make a Better World. This is David Tare, and this is the third video in my series about how we can really make America great again, in my opinion. And I know this is kind of an unpopular topic, but today I'm going to talk about taxes, which I think is something most people don't like, particularly Americans. But if you think about it, I think taxes are really a good thing. I mean, taxes only started becoming a dirty word in the 80s, I think, with Reagan. It was really Reagan who kind of started the whole business about how we should pay less taxes and have less government and all this. But, I don't think that's right. I mean, let's just look at what was going on. So when did income tax start? Income taxes got started in 1913, and I guess they weren't very popular then either. I mean, if you think about it, I can understand why Americans don't like taxes because that's exactly what we were rebelling against with Britain. We didn't want to pay, as colonies, we didn't want to pay British taxes. And, at that time, I can understand why we didn't want to because it wasn't our country. We're paying taxes to our mother country, and they were just using the money as they saw fit. But now we have our own country. And I think people have the wrong idea about taxes. I mean, we live in a democracy, at least supposedly we do. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And so taxes, as a democracy, should be for the people. Money for the government is for the people. That's simple. And, I mean, if you look at like the history of, most of the 20th century, I guess into the early 21st century, we had a lot of taxes for most of that time, particularly in the middle of that period. I'd say the mid 20th century. Look at this. The end of World War II, the income tax. This is just the income tax rate on the rich. The richest 10%. So look at what was going on. 1945, the rich were paying 94% income tax, and I guess that was kind of understandable. We had to pay a lot of money to the government to fund World War II to defeat the Axis powers and save the world and all that. So I can understand why people didn't mind paying taxes at that time. But even after World War II, I mean, look at this. This is the 50s and early 60s. With the richest 10% had a 91% income tax rate all throughout the 50s and even into the early 60s. And, this is kind of ironic, I think, because a lot of people look at the 50s, particularly a lot of Republicans, like the Tea Partyists, they say the 50s was the heyday of America, like 1957, I think is what most of them agree was the kind of the prime era for American history. But what they completely gloss over is the fact that at that time that they worship, the rich were paying 91% income tax. And they don't want high income tax on the rich. I think that's kind of ironic. And, I guess the income tax on the rich started falling in the 60s, and it's been falling ever since. When Reagan, it was still pretty high. I mean, look at this 1981. When Reagan became president, it was still around 70%. Not as high as it was in the 50s, but it was still pretty high on the rich. And, another thing people don't realize, if you look at this period, this post war period from around 1945 to around 1980, the government was doing a hell of a lot. I mean, we got us to the moon. I mean, the government, people trusted the government at that time. The government was doing some pretty amazing things. I mean, first of all, we won World War II. That was great. But then, we funded the whole space race. We funded all these other really important programs. I don't know about fighting polio, but we did a lot of pretty amazing things. The government did a lot of pretty amazing things in the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. And then Reagan started cutting the government budget, and he started cutting the taxes, particularly on the rich. So now the rich are only paying 38% income tax, and the government's been doing less and less for this country. And I think people have the wrong attitude about taxes. Particularly the rich. I mean, there's no excuse why the richest 10% of the country can't pay higher income tax. It's not like they need all that money for themselves. And they didn't seem to think they did in the mid 20th century either. So anyway, I'm just going to keep going on. So all I showed you in the last picture was the highest tax bracket. This is the lowest tax bracket. And as you can see, it's always been much lower for poor people, which makes sense. I mean, we have a graduated income tax. We always have, where the rich pay a lot more. But now it's kind of closer. I mean, the poor, these and the poor are getting poor. That's another thing people don't realize. I mean, this is a lot of tax for somebody in the low 10%. Having to pay. I guess right now they're only paying 10% income tax, but they hardly have any money anyways. That's pretty hard for them. So anyway, I just thought I'd show that. But what else can I say? Um, let's just look at some other graphs here. Um, yeah, so here's the breakdown of tax spending. And, this is 2020, only 3 years ago. And I guess I don't have too much complaints about this. I would have thought that defense spending was a lot higher. 10%, I guess I can live with that. I mean, I still think our military is getting too much money, but 10% I can live with. Welfare only 12%. I think that's pretty bad. I mean, I see homeless people on the streets every day near where I live. We didn't used to see that. I think we need a lot more tax money spent on welfare and helping the poor, and we should not have homeless people. I think that's inexcusable. I mean, one thing our taxes need to go for is just meeting people's basic needs. I mean, our country didn't used to be so divided. And I think it's a responsibility of government. We live in a democracy, like I said, of the people, by the people, for the people. And I think most people would agree that we shouldn't have people living in the streets. But we do, and it's just because the government. A lot of it's just because the government doesn't want to spend money on welfare and pensions and helping people who need it. And, other things we could be spending a lot more money on. Education, 13%. Only 13% of our income tax is going towards education. As we all know, public schools in this country are really bad. And, that's a whole nother video. I'm going to do videos on education and healthcare, but I think these are too low. I think 13% for education and 21% for healthcare are way too low. And I don't, pension, Social Security. I think most of Social Security's in trouble now. It's not really a guarantee that people will have enough money when they retire to live comfortably on their Social Security. And there's different ways we can fix that. For one thing, I don't think people should be retiring at age 65. People are living longer than they used to, so maybe 75 would be a better retirement age. But I think the government should have more money saved for Social Security too. And I don't know what all this other is. I have a feeling a lot of this other is waste. I'd like to know what this other stuff is going towards. I can think there's some good things it should be going towards. It is probably not, like maybe funding the arts, or funding I don't know, space travel, or other things that I think we kind of deem important. I have a feeling most of this other is being wasted right now, but this graph doesn't really show what it's going for. So this is breakdown for other countries, and like I said, Americans hate taxes, but look where we are compared to the rest of the world. I mean, like almost all of Europe pays a lot of taxes. France, I guess, has the highest tax rate of any country in the world, or at least in 2017 they did. Look at this, like 50%. They pay half of their money in income tax, and a lot of other European countries pay close to that. Denmark, Belgium, Sweden. Most of these are in Scandinavia. And Scandinavian countries do tend to be kind of socialist. But, most of Europe is like this. And, I actually lived in Holland for 4 months in 1995. And things were kind of like that then, too. Europeans paid a lot of income tax, but they didn't seem to mind. And, when I lived in Holland, I was very impressed with how the government was helping everybody. Everybody had free education and free health care, and the government was doing a lot for the people, and people there trusted the government. They didn't seem to mind that they were paying more taxes, and they were living pretty well. So I don't think just because you have to pay a lot of taxes means that you're necessarily badly off. That's not how the Europeans seem, but here we are. We're near the bottom, I guess, of this list. I don't know which countries are listed here. I guess this is most of the developed world, but we're we're around 30% income tax, and most Americans think that's too much. I don't, but anyway, yeah. So um, this is individual and corporate tax, and this is another bad thing. I think we've been giving corporations big tax breaks, bigger and bigger, and actually this has been going on for a long time. I'm kind of surprised by this, but corporate taxes, it looks like they started out about the same as individual taxes, but ever since I guess after World War II, they've been lower, and they've been getting lower and lower compared to individual taxes. So we're giving corporations big tax breaks. I think that's pretty bad. But anyway, uh, what else can I show you here? Complexity. This also staggered me. I mean, look at the complexity of our tax code. These are the number of pages of our tax code. I mean, come on, 75,000 pages. I mean, who in the hell is going to know all that? Who in the hell could read 75,000 pages? I've never read 75,000 pages in my life. You know, I think the biggest book I've ever read in my life was about 1,000 pages. That's like 70 of those books. So come on. I mean, this is just way too complicated. And, because it's so complicated, there's a lot of waste in tax collection. I mean, this is just tax collection costs. This is how much you have to pay, the average Americans pay to their accountants just to have their taxes done. I mean, for the average American, they have to pay, I guess, $457 just to have their taxes prepared. I mean, just think of all that waste. I saw a figure like I think $247 billion is spent in America every year just on tax collection, and that could be easily fixed. I mean, so last thing I'm going to talk about here is fair tax. I'm actually a fan of fair tax. I know a lot of people aren't, but fair tax would be so much simpler. Why don't we just have like a 25% income tax? I mean, not income, sales tax. I mean, again, it would be graduated. You wouldn't have to pay as much sales tax on food and necessities, food, clothing, shelter. That should be taxed the least. But then luxuries, why not tax those more? Like, why not tax the necessities maybe 10-15%, luxuries maybe 30-40%, and it would be so much easier, and people wouldn't worry about tax so much if they were just paying a sales tax every time they bought something. They wouldn't be thinking about tax. It would become natural. It would just be, you don't think about the sales tax you're paying anyway when you buy stuff. Most states have like a 5 or 6% sales tax rate anyway. So why not just make that a federal? Make all our taxes fair tax, sales tax. Then we wouldn't have to worry about income tax collection. Anyway, that's my talk about taxes. I think taxes are a good thing. One thing I didn't mention, of course, one reason that people don't like taxes is that, we need an accountable government. If we're going to have high taxes, we can't be wasting that money. And right now, the government is wasting a lot of money. They're spending a lot of our tax money on a lot of stuff we don't need. And we have to have an accountable government. I mean, like I said, we live in a democracy, so we should make sure that the government's spending our money the right way, which means we should be electing good people into the government who we trust and we know will be using our money for good things, and we have to make them accountable. So anyway, that's my video about taxes, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.